Welcome back to Plateau TV. Jay, how are you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I am. I'm good. I'm glad to be back here with you. As you know, I've this this undertaking by us has been a little bit of a shot in the arm for me, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, very cool, man. I'm looking forward to getting into it with you today. A lot of unexpected stuff. What I was telling you before we went live here.
Yeah,
A lot of stuff really caught me off guard.
I'm glad. That's the
Yeah.
sign of good TV. So tonight's episode of Plateau TV, we are covering the final. I'm going to call them 3 episodes of Lost, but depending on how you define that, it could be 4 because really the finale is split up into 2 parts, and even the final part I think is actually longer than a traditional episode anyway. But again, essentially
That's
3 stories, the final 3 of the first season of Lost, and it's really the final season of Lost is really the final episodes of the first season of Lost rather are really the culmination of that whole kind of like lightning in a bottle phenomena that I've brought up a couple of times when we've been talking about it this season. Just that ABC greenlit this wacky pilot, this expensive pilot. The ABC exec who did it got fired. No one believed in it. Damon Lindelof kind of did it on a lark. Almost went crazy, had to bring in his mentor to help him run the show. The writer's room is populated with a bunch of really talented but kind of bombastic personalities. When Lost transitions from its first season into its second season, with the exception of Damon Lindelof, only one of the staff writers will transition into that second season, and no drama. This is just kind of how it works. This is just how Hollywood works. But there was a lot of alchemy in this show, and I think really the final episodes of season 1 kind of bring it all to a head. And again, we'll dive into the details of that. But before we go into the specific episodes, just how, like, were you psyched? Were you jazzed? I mean, how are you feeling overall?
Yeah, totally, man. It's I'm really into it, and like I told you before, this is definitely a show that I probably would watch like the entire thing in like a week.
Right. And I actually think there's some, again, and we're not doing 1 episode at a time, which I think is
Right.
good because I think you'd go crazy, and I don't think we would finish. I think
Right.
we'd lose interest at some point. Not that I could ever lose interest in Lost, but just there's 120 hours of
Right.
Lost, and it's just that's an investment in time that I don't know we were willing to give. But also keeping in context that when you watched Lost originally, you had to go week to week. You had to wait. There was all kinds of debating and talking and thinking about what we just saw.
Mhm.
But then because we're doing like 6 episodes at a jump, although 4 for the end of the season, we're kind of bringing in the binge stuff. Because I tend to think at this point, Lost has been off the air now this is actually the 10th anniversary.
Oh,
Back
wow.
in May was the 10th anniversary of Lost's series finale. So been 10 years since Lost was on the air. And I tend to think that it's probably earning new viewers like every day. Like people who have Hulu are, because
Mhm.
that's where its streaming rights are both on Hulu and IMDb
Yeah.
TV, which is kind of an offshoot of Amazon Prime. But I tend to think that there's probably people like discovering the show on there every day and binging it. So you're getting, I think, a blend of those experiences, which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
But did you feel did you feel any sort of like inertia or propulsion as the season kind of was working its way to the end? Like I feel like the episodes we watched last week, just to bring everybody up to speed, those episodes culminated in the death of Boone, Ian Somerhalder, and I could be butchering his last name. Apologies, but Boone, the character Boone, died. He was in a beechcraft that fell, and his injuries were too much for Jack to save him. And Jack went rushing off into the jungle, thinking that John Locke killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just wonder, as you started these episodes, did you feel any sort of like? I always feel, I'll speak for me, I kind of feel like these get like, you feel like shot out of a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Like these final episodes are kind of like moving pretty briskly in a way that the first, if you remember, like the first 8 episodes or so didn't really have that propulsive effect. They were good, right? They were still good character stories, all that stuff. But these are like every episode ends and you're just like, man, I'd really love to watch the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think the first 8 was kind of just establishing characters, and establishing the world that they're in. Yeah. And then now we're moving towards the finale, so you can definitely feel it. Yeah. Faster paced, I think, too.
Yeah. So there's actually one thing I wanted to mention, just because I thought these episodes in particular have some pretty great moments overall, things to remember, things to call out. I wanted to create kind of a new category of things for us to sort of call out and talk about, which I just call great moments. Like we'll definitely talk about the finale, which is, we may spend the majority of our time on that, but I feel like the other 2 episodes do have some great moments too. But that was actually what encouraged me to create the new categories. I just feel like in the finale especially, every scene has either an iconic moment or just some sort of moment of great acting, or something gets paid off. Just there's just a number of things that are just, when I look back on Lost, if you were to ask me, like Eric, what is Lost? Like if there was a scene that defined Lost for you, like what would you say? I think I would say, let's call up the scene of Jack and Locke in the jungle heading to the hatch.
That's what I figured you were going to say. That's what I thought.
That scene, and again, let's not. I won't. I promise. I'll hold back, but I'll just say here that to me, that scene pretty much tells you what Lost is about. That's what that scene is about. Like this is the show you're watching. Like everything happening in that scene. And I don't know if we were messaging a little bit about this on Twitter, but I don't know whether you could feel the weight of that scene, or if even you just could kind of detect, like, wait a second, what I'm watching is important here. But I know that even when I watched it the first time, that was the feeling that I had, that like there was something momentous happening just between these 2 characters in that moment in the jungle.
Well, we've got the two main guys, essentially, the 2 guys that are battling for the leadership position of these people. And you kind of see their different, philosophies, butt heads a little bit with each other.
Yeah.
Because now it's no mystery that Locke definitely thinks that, this is all in motion and it's all, meant to happen certain ways, destiny.
Yeah.
And, Jack is obviously a guy that says he doesn't believe in destiny.
Yeah. Well, Jack says that he's a guy who is like, hey, listen, man, we got on a plane in Australia. That plane crashed. We happened to crash on this island. We're trying to survive. We're trying to get off the island. Like, that's the story. And Locke thinks, you know what? Like, all those things are true, but it's not like those things just happen and it doesn't mean anything. Like, there's clearly something else going on here. And again, we can dig into this in a couple more minutes, but before we dive into the episodes, there's actually something I wanted to bring up, because ironically, and I didn't plan it this way, before these 3 episodes aired, there was something Lost used to do that I actually rather loved. And I'm actually disappointed that the DVDs don't have them. You can find some of them on YouTube, but not all of them. And I'm guessing there's some uber nerd fan somewhere who may have it. But basically, because Lost is such a heavily serialized show, and even though Lost came out kind of on the cusp of like the DVD era where seasons would be released and people could go back and watch it, Lost used to do these recap shows. And so, ironically, what I think happened in the original airing, because remember, I didn't watch the show live in the first season. I caught up later, as we've talked about a few times. But in the original airing, I think this is true, after the episode where Boone died, there was a little bit of a break in episodes. As they're, because basically they were queuing up for May sweeps, and they were going to do their final run probably starting in May. So that initial, in fact, I could actually probably look that up here and not make myself a liar, but yeah, let's just see, because there's probably an original air date listed on here. Yeah, so the episode Do No Harm, where Boone died, aired April 6th, and the next episode aired, The Greater Good, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, aired, May 4th. So basically a month. You had to wait a month, and then the thing I'm talking about, and I'm dancing around it, this recap show is called Lost: The Journey. That actually aired the week before the new episode. And it basically kind of brought everybody up to speed on what had happened in the show from the pilot up until, Boone died. And kind of teeing things up like, probably, if I had to guess, because I actually tried to find that special and I couldn't. It wasn't, at least it wasn't on YouTube. If it exists somewhere else, I'd certainly love to see it. But basically, it probably ended with like the final shot of Jack like, I'm going to find John Locke. Mm-hmm. But these recap shows, Jay, were just really like Brian Cox, a.k.a. Hannibal Lecter from Manhunter, a.k.a. the villain from X-Men 2. And, I mean, God, isn't he on that great, isn't there like an HBO show he's on right now? I forget what that's called, but it's like the one about kind of the family, like the rich family or something.
I'm not sure.
I forget what it's called. My wife actually could probably tell me because I remember she wanted to watch that show, and I didn't renew HBO Max. In any case, like Brian Cox was like the narrator, and so and these things like, and the way that they were pieced together was always like really cool. It always sort of also put things in kind of an interesting context, like very closely tying things together, like pointing things out that maybe you wouldn't have seen. Mm-hmm. And as I recall, and I don't think this was true in this one, or even in any in the second season, I do remember in the third season, you actually got some new information out of one of these things. Like it clarified something that like the episodes didn't really make clear. Like it said something straight. I have to dig into what that is, but just that's cool. You would think like these recap shows were just like stupid. Like, well, I've already seen all the episodes. Why do I need to watch this? But there was something about them that was just really entertaining. And I remember I used to watch them. This one I didn't, as I say. But
kind of establishing that this is a show where you have to really pay attention and there's lots of mysteries and, you can guess what's going to happen. And, like you were saying with, message boards and stuff, people get to argue and, discuss, which is a, cool part, to a show, adds another, bit that you could, discuss at the water cooler or whatever.
And I think at this point in the show too, arguably, if you just happen to, by this point, I think most people had heard about Lost. If you happen to stumble across this special, you might have actually watched the remainder of the season.
Right.
Might have been like, wow, this actually is kind of interesting. I think I'm going to let's check this thing out. And then, this person may have gone and bought the DVD to actually fully watch it. But the specials were really great. And we don't need to talk too much more about it. But I did just want to call that out, that the first one of these things aired before the run of episodes that we're going to talk about tonight, and that these were just really cool things that I I just remember we used to watch them and enjoy them, and they were pretty good quality.
Yeah, shows like that, the recap stuff probably doesn't even exist anymore because, television as we know it really doesn't exist like that anymore. Everything is.
That's right.
Everything is either, streaming or, the entire series is available on the same day or, entire season is available on the same day.
Well, think about a show now. If Lost were to come out today, it would air, and then if you wanted to watch, like say you came in halfway through, you could go on Hulu, and maybe the part, like the first half of the season that you didn't see, would be up there, or it would be on like ABC.com, or it would be on there would be, or you could go buy them if you could go on Amazon. If they didn't exist anywhere else, you could go and just rent or buy the episodes or whatever. So the choice existed to do that. And as I say, in 2000, at this point it was 2005. At that point, the idea of like DVD sets for TV shows, it's not like those existed, because like at that point, they had released X-Files DVD sets. They'd released Buffy DVD sets, the Star Trek sets. Like, TV shows were out on DVD, even the new ones. So it's not like there wasn't a precedent for that. But like you say, TV was in the midst of a transition. And Lost was so heavily serialized, and they were they were still in the pure viewership game. They were trying to catch people up. So you're right. Like, I don't think these kind of recap shows would exist today like they did then, but that's another reason why they're interesting, is like because they were all like they were sort of one of a kind and very well done. Like, it wasn't just a clip show. I mean, it was a clip show, but there was like a melodramatic narrator. They were kind of tying things together for you. It was just very cool stuff. So the other thing to just note for folks, there's a new category in terms of what we'll talk about as we go through the episodes. I'm calling it great moments, and so as we go through, we'll call some things out in the episodes that we were watching. So, first episode that you watched this time around was called "The Greater Good." Oh, let me grab my Lost official Lost series book. Comes from the complete series set. It's called The Greater Good. It was a Saeed-centric episode. And this one actually did answer the question that we've kind of been wondering for a while. Why was Saeed in Australia? So, one island crime is solved. The identity of the arsonist who destroyed Michael's raft. Shannon becomes convinced that Locke is responsible for Boone's death and asks Saeed for a favor. Trekking into the jungle with Locke, Saeed becomes convinced that he is not responsible for the tragedy, but Shannon remains adamant and decides to take matters into her own hands. So the sort of island story is, and we'll get into a couple of these things here in detail in a moment, but basically, we have a funeral for Boone. Obviously, Jack is super pissed. He thinks Locke killed him, or Locke is responsible. Shannon's very sad. She seems to have a similar opinion. And Saeed kind of is pulling out his old interrogator skills. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of Saeed's personal story, we learn why he was in Australia, and kind of what he was doing on Oceanic Flight 815. Was there anything in this episode, kind of just before we get into the nitty gritty, that jumped out at you that you particularly liked?
It is nice to finally get the real backstory on Saeed, and it was really a touching episode considering what happened. It really, considering the climate we're in, we're still in post 9/11 at this point. Just a few years after 9/11. So
2005. So it was still. That's right.
If you think about, the where we were, it was still heavily on our minds and stuff. So they talk about the Muslim and their suicide bombers and, how he's basically working for the CIA, right?
Yeah, basically the CIA, captures him, for lack of a better description, in London, and they bring him to Australia because there's what they believe to be a terror cell in Australia that's going to commit a bombing, and they grab Saeed because Saeed happens to have a relationship with one of the guys in the cell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's, yeah, I mean, I lost a lot of respect for Shannon in this episode. And kind of Jack too, because they're acting really irrational. And that's kind of contrary to how Jack normally does things, but everyone's, consumed with grief right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess you just do stupid things sometimes when you're in that type of state. But
Yeah.
I don't like how it was like, okay, Locke has got to tell us what's going on. It's like, I mean, what business is it of theirs? I mean, I guess he's got to prove that he didn't kill Boone. I mean, I don't know.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate here because I've made my deep love of John Locke known. But if I had to try to translate Jack's reaction, and we'll talk about Shannon in a moment. So the thing we know about Jack, because you've commented about this in the past, he's a little bit of a cock sometimes. Like he a control freak might be a good way to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like he needs things to be done the way he needs them, and like he feels deceived here. Locke, and he feels like that Locke wasn't being honest with them, right? And so the only in Jack's mind, the only reason Locke would be deceiving them would be because he killed Boone, or he's responsible for Boone's death, right? Now, again, my allegiances are sort of with Locke, and also we saw what happened. Like Locke, even in the most, if I tried to put responsibility on Locke's shoulders, I still think it's hard to maintain, right? Like Locke couldn't climb up in the plane. He didn't want Boone to get hurt. I don't, there was no. Well, was he careless? Maybe, but
he was careless. But his desire to find out what's in that plane, trumped his I don't know, I guess safe, his other thoughts.
Well, that's maybe, again, devil's advocate. Maybe there's something to that. Locke was so obsessed with getting in the hatch and believing that the plane was something that the island told him he needed to get to and do. No matter what stood in his way, he was going to do it. And Boone was kind of caught in the middle of that. So I think looking at it through that lens, Locke certainly. Again, in a court of law, I don't think Locke is responsible for anything morally. I think that's a more complex question. Locke clearly has other motives that he's not kind of revealed, even to the audience. Right. But I would say it's not like Locke. This was not a callous act. Like no. Boone was Locke's friend. I mean, you might even say he was kind of like a mentor, or was kind of like a. Like a father, kind of a sort of a father-son type thing going on there a little bit, right? So I don't think Locke wanted anything bad to happen to him, but his obsession certainly led them to
I think he's got to be feeling a lot of guilt as well,
Right.
Because he feels like it's his fault. But, after Saeed, does his whole interrogation of Locke at the plane, he kind of, you can tell Saeed really knows when people are lying, because he knows, John Locke's this, this skilled guy that's normally so good at everything. He's not able to lie to Saeed without him knowing. So he tells the whole truth. And then he kind of calls out Jack, because Jack's like, why didn't you tell us about this? And he's like, well, how long did you have that briefcase of guns before you told us about it? Which he's like, I made a character judgment. I made a judgment call that everyone doesn't need to know about this right now, and I think he has the right to do that, if Jack's like so high and mighty that he can do stuff like that, but no one else can. You have to immediately tell me. I'm the leader, Jack. Tell me about it. Really,
back in the day, Jay, I used to get so pissed off at Jack.
I've got that in my notes, man.
We could bring my wife on as a special guest. She could tell you that I used to get fired. I'd be like, "What this fucking cock?"
Yeah.
He used to bother me a lot. I think that's all fair. And then just to lay it out there, like in terms of what we're talking about, like so. At the major moment of the episode is we bury Boone, right? So Boone has died. We have a funeral for Boone, and in the middle of the funeral, like Locke, remember Locke kind of disappeared. Locke dropped Boone off in the caves,
right,
and then went off to like cry and smack the lid of the hatch in the jungle, while Jack and Son and a bunch of others were trying to save Boone. Well, here we are, like I guess a day later, and they're having the funeral to bury Boone. Saeed gives, Shannon won't speak. Jack, oddly enough, Jack won't say anything either, doesn't say anything, but Saeed steps up, feeling, because Saeed is in love with Shannon and feeling like he needs to address this. Calls out, Boone's heroism, when he tried to save the woman, Joanna, from earlier in the season. And I guess I just always thought like Locke's dramatic appearance at the funeral was sort of like he shows up and he's covered in Boone's blood.
Yeah.
Like he's like soaked from the shoulders down. I guess I always just thought like, I don't know, man, you couldn't have like went and grabbed like a shirt or something before showing up here. That just seemed like bad etiquette for something like this.
Yeah.
Boone, by the way, Locke, says it's his fault. Again, I'm a huge Locke fan, but I would wonder, and I wonder what your opinion is. Is Locke engaging in some theater here? Is he kind of publicly admitting responsibility to maybe kind of not give himself a pass necessarily, but I don't know, like, I detect some theatricality in his dramatic appearance at the funeral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was your take on that?
That's television for you, I guess.
And maybe it could just be that. But I almost wondered, I guess more in terms of like, did the character do this on purpose to sort of like, he makes this mea culpa in front of everybody to kind of like, oh, well, it was my fault. I do believe he thinks that.
Sure.
Like, I believe he believes that it is his fault. But there's just something very sort of melodramatic about it that, given maybe this is something that, given my foreknowledge of the show, maybe I read more into it than you do. And I don't think there's any spoiler intended in that. It's just that maybe I'm reading into it and I shouldn't.
What did he say? What was the first thing he said when he was at the funeral?
If I remember correctly, he said it was my fault. Like he died because of me. Okay. And then he kind of revealed kind of the big secret too about the Beechcraft. He said, like, listen, we found a plane in the jungle. Like we thought there was something in it that could help us. And he sort of glosses over what happened to his legs. But he says like he basically says like I was hurt, I couldn't get up there, but Boone climbed up. He was trying to help us, and he, if I remember correctly, it's like he died because he was trying to help us, and then Jack goes ballistic on him and like starts attacking him. You have to yank Jack off him.
I mean, who is he? And we're not living in some sort of a, society. Like there are no rules here. I could kill all of you right now if I wanted to, I could do whatever I want.
If I want to try to be fair, Jack just spent the past however many hours trying to save Boone. He like bled out of his own arm to save this kid. Locke, and remember too, Locke was not honest about what happened to Boone, and so part of how Jack approached trying to care for Boone was predicated on not having all the information he needed. Like, Boone's leg was crushed. He didn't just fall, right? Now, listen, they're on a tropical island in the middle of nowhere. I'm really not all that sure that whether Jack knew his leg was crushed or he fell from a high from somewhere high, that Jack could have saved him anyway. But if you're getting inside of Jack's headspace, like, he's also like in this moment too, like, I don't think he slept, right? Like, he's exhausted. He's just bled out of his arm. He's thinking Locke lied to them and then he just disappeared. I think you're just getting a visceral, like, reaction out of him that's maybe not fully thought through.
But I mean, if Locke was going to kill Boone, I mean, why would he go through the trouble of bringing his body, or not he was still alive at that point, bringing him back to the caves for Jack to try to save him?
Well, again, in the whole, like, he was murdered thing, I think it's more Jack. I think they're playing with the language a little bit. I think Jack is he just is making it clear he thinks Locke is responsible.
Right.
Like, he got this kid killed. I don't know that Jack necessarily thinks Locke, like, took him out in the jungle and threw him off a cliff necessarily, but that, whatever they were doing and that Locke's lying about is what got Boone killed.
Right.
And that he's responsible for that. And like I said, defending Jack is not I'm digging down deep to do this. I'm trying to play it fair. But if I try to see it from the character's perspective, that's kind of my perspective.
Did you ever watch the first few seasons of The Walking Dead?
I did. Oh, remember, maybe we haven't talked about this, but I watched Walking Dead through the season that ends. We don't need to go down this road, but the season that basically ends where you don't know who Negan was beating to death.
I was trying to think of
the stupidest, lamest finale in the history of television.
Yeah.
And I actually did tune in to see next year, but I didn't, like, watch it live. I, like, watched it after. But yes, that was about. So I forget what that was, season 6 or whatever that was.
Anyway, my point was I kind of equate this to, like, Shane and Rick in the first couple of seasons when Shane was still on the show. Because at first I didn't like Shane. I was like, Shane's an asshole. But when I got to thinking about it, Shane is the realistic one in the position. Like, we're not living in a society anymore. There is no law or order. There is no law and order. So, all that's gone. Like, I'm going to do what is best for me and my family, to save them. Like, if that means me murdering you, then that's going to happen, like, I'm just saying, that's the world we're living in right now. If me getting food from you means I got to kill you, that's just how it is. You've got to think about this situation somewhat like that. They've been here for a month on the island, right? So, I mean, there are no rules here, I mean, I don't know. That's just kind of the way I think about when people are in, survival mode like that.
Well, I would call your attention back to Jack's seminal speech in, I think it was at the end of White Rabbit, the what will come to be known as the "Live Together, Die Alone" speech. Mm-hmm. You're right that there are no rules, but to a certain extent, I think Jack was sort of laying down a philosophy there of, like, listen, if we're all just running off in different directions, kind of doing whatever the hell we want, like, we're all going to die here. Like, we need to sort of work together to survive so we can get off this island. Yeah. And your overall point is, well, they can do that, I think, but that does not mean that Jack is the king.
Exactly.
And, there are set rules about, but I think in absence of, any sort of, like, constitution or whatever, that, like, you're sort of going off of, each character's moral compass as far as what they think is acceptable. And so and Jack clearly has, like, a pretty defined moral compass, I think, based on what we've seen even in his flashbacks and what he did. Like, again, this is a guy who turned his dad into the medical board for operating on someone while they were drunk. And by the way, I actually think he's right to do that. Like, I actually, that's hard. Clearly, you got to have some tough moral character to do something like that to your own dad. But
you're burning your bridges.
Yeah, but even so, I get that. I guess that's just my reaction. You're right. I'm with you. But I do think that's kind of how they approach it.
Say you take a domesticated dog, been domesticated for hundreds, thousands of years, right? And you put them in the woods for like 2 weeks and they go feral, Like that's how long it takes for those natural instincts to come out. Survival,
That's true.
It's really bizarre. Like, I feel like people are the same,
Yeah.
We live in this society with, rules that govern our behavior, but the second you step outside of that, it's it's any man's game.
It's a fair point. So I think that covered, so Jack is deeply skeptical of Locke. Saeed takes it on himself to basically to question Locke, find out what did happen. So Locke, what you were talking about, Locke takes Saeed to the Beechcraft. They find the statues, the Virgin Mary statues filled with heroin, and the whatchamacallit, the Nigerian priests, the drug dealer Nigerian priests, and Saeed even catches Locke with a gun because one of those priests had a gun. And if you recall too, we have a mystery solved in this episode. Because I remember you were saying there were mysteries. We're having more mysteries open up than are solved, but we learn Locke's the one who knocked Saeed out when he was trying to send the transmission, triangulate the transmission from the radio tower, which comes out when Saeed's questioning him. But again, that aside, and Locke explains it as listen, everybody was freaking out. I was doing this for, everybody's welfare. If we went trekking off into the jungle, more people were going to get killed, something like that. I'm not entirely sure I fully believe his answer, but Saeed seems to believe it enough that, Locke doesn't get his head blown off. But to the point of the description, Shannon just I think Shannon is just grief-stricken. Yeah. Boone is dead. Jack thinks Locke is responsible. Shannon kind of lives in a vacuum, right? She's been off with Saeed, playing beach party and all these other things, but she's not kind of doing the island treks that some of the other people are doing. She's, sunning herself on the beach and whatnot. Right. So I think she's just sort of reacting to Jack and her own grief, and she just holds Locke responsible. And so she, manages to get the key away from Jack, and she goes to kill Locke. And
after Kate puts sleeping pills in Jack's water.
Yeah, because Jack hasn't. Yeah, he's losing. He had lost some blood. He hadn't slept in a day. Kate gave him some sleep medicine, and Shannon took the key from around his neck and went and got the gun. But the interesting thing I thought that we kind of learned about Shannon here, Shannon would have killed Locke if
absolutely. Yeah.
She was going to shoot him, and Saeed tackled her. That shot, if you remember, if I remember correctly, Locke it skinned his head.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Shannon's cold. The other just to bring to put a bow on Saeed's flashback story. It's all about Saeed in Australia, kind of hooking up with this old buddy of his, trying to figure out what they're doing, and they are running a terror cell. They are planning a bombing. And when his buddy finds out that Saeed's working for the CIA, he kills himself. But we learn that Saeed was on Oceanic Flight 815 because his old girlfriend Nadia, who he wouldn't torture back in Iraq, who Saeed thought was dead, is in fact alive, or at least the CIA tells him is alive, and in LA. And
that's what they blackmail him with, basically. to get him to go forward with the mission.
Yes, that they know where she is, and they'll kind of hook them up.
They'll put her in prison if he doesn't go along with it.
Right. And by the way, too, Saeed could have taken an earlier flight, but he took possession of his friend's body to bury it, and so the next available flight was Oceanic Flight 815, which is
that's what I was going to say. We're all getting the backstory of how everyone wound up on this specific flight. It's like someone missed a flight here, or someone had to rush to get to this one, or whatever. Whatever fate caused it to happen.
Right. So this episode, I mean, we already talked about Boone's funeral, but there's some just great moments. So Boone's funeral is overall a pretty great moment, both for kind of what Saeed does, and then kind of the Locke confession and the Jack freak out. But there's also some sort of side island stuff that whenever I go back and watch the show, I really try to enjoy some of the other things that are going on, like enjoy the journey stuff. Charlie and Hurley trying to get the baby to stop crying, singing to the baby on the beach is a pretty great sequence. And then, even better, discovering that Sawyer's voice is soothing to the baby, and so Charlie is like following Sawyer around with the baby.
He's like reading out of some car magazine or something to the baby.
Yeah, they just have him talking, and it soothes the baby. And then the thing I called out about Shannon, I just thought was like Shannon was gonna murder Locke. Like she was gonna exact some island justice there, which I thought was interesting.
Vengeance.
Yeah, and so just in the nickname category, I don't know if you caught any, but Sawyer called the baby Huey, and Charlie was Chucky, which I don't know whether that counts necessarily, but those are the only two I got out of that one.
I've got a lot in episode 22. I didn't have any for this one.
Okay. All right. So the next episode, Born to Run, is a Kate-centric episode. I think we're now on our third Kate-centric episode here, by the way. This is the one I almost spoiled earlier. I forget, it was like 2 episodes ago. I got the Kate episodes mixed up. This is the one where Mackenzie Aston plays Kate's like childhood sweetheart. But basically the plot of this one is on the island, Kate is desperate to get a seat on the raft. She's kind of trying to get Sawyer booted off. Someone poisons Michael's water. Essentially kind of Sawyer exposes Kate to everybody. And then meanwhile, the Kate flashback is essentially, this actually is kind of, we have a mystery solved. Like, why is Kate so obsessed with that stupid toy airplane? And we learn that in her past, her childhood sweetheart was killed by the U.S. Marshals when she used him to go and see her mother, who was receiving cancer treatments while she was on the run. And this airplane was something that she shared with this guy when they were kids. It was in the they time buried a New Kids on the Block lunchbox time capsule that they dug up when they were.
Did you ever do that? There. Did you ever do a time capsule?
Not that I remember.
We did one like when I was in grade school, with the school.
Yeah.
I don't even remember where it was buried, but I'm sure it's still there.
I feel, I guess now that you say that, there might have been one we did in grade school, but I don't remember where I'm sure we buried it on school property, but I don't remember where that was, and I don't remember if it was ever, like, if we ever opened it or anything.
Yeah.
So
it seems like one of those things that was really popular, like in the 80s.
Yeah.
For some reason. Or maybe early 90s. It was like, you saw it on like sitcoms and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, in the guest actor category, Lost has great guest actors. Yeah, Mackenzie Aston plays Kate's old love. And I forgot to write her name down, but just Kate's mom is Sabrina the Teenage Witch's aunt. Or one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh man.
that was one of Sabrina's. Well, again, in the '90s show, not the
Yeah.
new
The
Sally
blonde.
Draper running around in her underwear Netflix version.
Blonde. She was blonde in the show, right? You're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't think of her name right off, but yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I forget that actress's name, but yeah, she's Kate's mom, and so in terms of really in terms of the like it's sort of a straightforward plot on the island because it's like there's sort of a lot of things happening. We meet one of the other survivors close up, a gentleman named Dr. Arzt.
Arzt. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
2-episode run.
Yeah, he basically tries to tell Michael and the other raft members that they need to launch because it's monsoon season or else they're not going to be able to launch. Who knows if he's I think he's full of shit, but that's what he says, and so he kind of shows up, and he's kind of one of the other survivors that is always in the background, but he sort of came forward in this episode, and. The mystery of who poisoned Michael's water, this is a sort of a 1-episode mystery because we learned that it was Sun, but she actually was trying to poison Jin's water. She doesn't want him to go.
Yeah, that's actually, I wrote that down as an unsolved, but we find out at the end that it was Sun.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, I was just the only other mystery I was going to call out is, and I guess this is to be solved later, but superpower Walt shows up again. He touches Locke's hand and he tells Locke not to open that thing, I guess the hatch. And so why does Walt say that?
It makes you want. He seems like he's almost like his eyes are glazed over kind of, and he's just, it's almost like he's possessed or something, like just speak, he's like an oracle or something at this point.
He's got, because the people who make Lost are very big Stephen King fans. I mean, he just seems a lot like, a Danny Torrance simulacrum.
That's
like he's
exactly
very much
what I thought.
It's not like he's, channeling visions or anything. It's just sometimes he gets a feeling or he sees an image in his mind and he kind of like it's sort of like that kind of psychic type thing.
I mean, how many times do we get told don't open the hatch? I mean, like 5 people say it at one point, don't they? Like, I know we'll get there, but Hurley's one of them.
Right. So that was the other thing is in this episode. So actually, to be fair, at the end of the previous episode, because that actually does set up what you're talking about. At the end of the previous episode, Saeed had kind of tried to get Locke to tell him at the Beechcraft about the hatch because that was something Boone had mentioned while he was kind of delirious and in pain, and Locke kind of tried playing it off as like, the plane hatch.
It's 2 hatches.
Look, see. But Saeed, as we learned at the very end of that episode, never believed him, and he knows there is something else, and so that was how that episode ends: is take me to the hatch. So in this episode, finally, the secret of the hatch is revealed. Well, maybe not to all, but to more than just Locke. Locke takes Saeed out there, and then eventually they bring Jack out. And Jack's attitude is sort of similar to Locke's, and like, okay, how do we get in? Whereas Saeed's like, hold on a second, this is a bad idea. Like he's like, I can think of all kinds of bad reasons why we don't want to go into this. So in the case of Saeed is just kind of thinking like, hey man, this thing's there's no handle on the outside.
Right.
This thing was buried in the jungle on this island of mystery. Like, we don't want to go in this place. Whereas Walt is having something more of like a psychic premonition, right? But to your point, what is in this hatch? Mm-hmm. There might be some bad juju going on here. So I'm sorry, but you had a point you were going to make with that.
Well, I was going to ask you. So at this point, before Sawyer calls out Kate and basically, discloses that she was the prisoner, only a few people knew that, right?
Yeah, I think it was Jack and Hurley, and I think Charlie knew. and maybe Saeed knew, and I think Sawyer knows, but like, well, obviously Sawyer knows, but like, generally speaking, it wasn't something that they told. Like, I think maybe Son even knew, right? Like, but I don't think it was sort of widely known by everybody that she was the one in handcuffs, that she was with the marshal on the plane. So yeah, Sawyer kind of outs that secret for pretty much the rest of the castaways here.
And I have another question for you. So we see Kate at the hospital, right? And we see what happens there. You know, this is when her good childhood friend, possible someone she has romantic feelings for, she gets killed. It's her fault that he dies.
Yeah.
But before, we don't see what she's actually on the run for, right? Like, that's
right. We don't. I actually flagged, just a reminder, what did Kate do?
Okay.
Because if you remember, Kate's mom, delirious from her cancer treatments, sees her daughter, and her first reaction is not, "Oh, my beloved girl, I missed you." It's, "Help." What did Kate do? Right. So to your point, we still don't yet know exactly what Kate did. So that is still an outstanding mystery, to be sure.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I was just checking on that because, I mean, heck, just for that alone, she's on the run. You know, she hits I don't know if he's a security guard or policeman, hits him. You know, originally when he's trying to call it in, and then runs from the cops, gets that guy killed. So I don't know what all the charges would be against her at this point.
Kate's original crime is kind of what set her on the run. While she was on the run, we've already seen she's done all kinds of other hairy shit to just make it all worse. So, we still don't know the original crime, but to your point, she's done all kinds of other stuff that, you know, that's why they're after her for all kinds of reasons now. In terms of great moments, we sort of already covered them. Like, I just wrote Dr. Arzt, our introduction to Dr. Arzt. I just like that actor. He's popped up in other things, and it's just great to see. I always like it when kind of the castaways pop out, because, you know, we haven't talked enough about Rose. We have discussed her, and I'm sure I'm sure you've taken notice of Rose, the older black woman who thinks her husband is still alive, who, you know, is, you know, she's always, you know, she was bugging Charlie when he was feeling sorry for himself about almost getting killed by Ethan. You know, she was kind of making him help her and trying to bring him along. She's kind of the only other castaway with personality, but now we also have Dr. Arzt that we meet in this episode.
So, I mean, it's really, it was a smart move to put so many other survivors on the island, because, you know, I'm sure as this goes on, we're going to get to meet more and more of those people, and they're probably going to get killed off too. But, Arzt is funny. I mean, every time he's on screen, it's comic relief, you know, like they play it for comic relief the entire time.
And I also think too, it's like the writers on Lost, this will certainly become clearer in subsequent seasons, but to me, Hurley, I think, has always played this role. Yeah. But Dr. Arzt is sort of another sort of simulacrum of the audience and the writers having a little bit of a dialogue directly with, because, like, we're jumping ahead here a little bit, and I'll reel it back. But, like, Dr. Arzt is sort of talking about how, like, oh, well, only the main cast, you know, they're sort of like the in-group, you know, they're the only ones doing anything important. And he's bitching about that.
That was funny. He's like, I teach high school. You think I don't know clicks?
Right. So, it's kind of, to be honest, this is a little bit of like Star Trek Voyager syndrome, I think. Because that was always something that annoyed me on Voyager, that, like, only the main people we ever saw ever seemed to do anything. And, like, on Star Trek The Next Generation, that Enterprise had, like, a crew of, like, 1,000 people. Yeah. And they were still in the Federation. So, like, there were probably new crew coming on and getting off all the time. And, you know, whatever. There were a couple people I think we would, like Lieutenant Barclay was kind of a character we would see. There were other, like Dr. Crusher had like a nurse that we saw a few other times, and there were other characters like that.
Well, you've got to have a bunch of ensigns around to die every episode.
Yes. Whereas on Voyager, they're trapped in the Delta Quadrant. They only had a crew of like, what was it, 150 people or 140 people, whatever. It was some number. You would have thought like over the 7 seasons of the show, like we'd have gotten to know some of these people, but really you didn't. Like, I'm sure if you were to tabulate up like all the faceless crew, it probably totals more than 150.
Yeah.
And the number of recurring characters, like, there was a guy I remember, because I remember he was in like 3 episodes. He was in like 2 episodes in like the first 2 seasons, and then they brought him back in the final season to kill him. I think it was Lieutenant Carey. Like, he was the guy that B'Elanna beat out to be chief engineer. But whatever. We're going down a road here. On Lost, it's sort of the same thing. Like, you'd think you'd get to know the other castaways because there's only 48 of them. Or there were 48. You know, some of them have died.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's our total at now? We lost Boone, and then we're going to lose Arnst.
We lost Joanna. Yeah.
And we gained Aaron.
That's true. Yeah, I think we were at like 46, 45 or 46, and then we get Aaron. And then Arst. Yeah, I think it's like 45 or 44 or something like that.
That needs to be something else that we pay attention to. What's our survivor count at?
Yeah, what's the count? That's true. So yeah, I think we've covered all the great moments I had written down, and I didn't have any nicknames. You said you had a bunch of nicknames from this episode?
I've got a bunch, yeah.
In this one, what were those?
Let's see, make sure I'm on the right episode. Okay, this is Born to Run.
Yeah.
He calls Michael Mickey.
Okay.
This is Sawyer nicknames, guys.
Yep.
He calls Kate Puddin'. He calls Kate Sweet Cheeks.
Yep.
And he calls Jen Boy.
Yep. That sounds like Sawyer.
Yeah, I mean the main point I had a few funny notes written down because I says Art, some random dude shows up and says they can't launch the boat. Some guy we've never seen before. Hey, I'm in the shot now.
Yeah, I'm here too. I've been on the island this whole time. Right.
I said I really hate that Jack thinks he can tell everyone what to do.
Yeah.
I use stronger language than that, but we'll just leave it at that.
Sure. It occurs to me that I forgot to read the official description of Born to Run before we move on. Let me do that.
Okay.
Just because I do like consulting the official guidebook. With construction of the raft nearing completion, Kate has a special request for Michael. She wants to be on it when it sails. During a water break, Michael keels over in pain. Jack examines him and discovers that he has been poisoned. Jack and Locke's investigation of the crime leads to a crashing revelation about Kate's past. My suspicion is that should say crushing revelation. Crashing seems odd word choice, but yes. So that's a pretty good distillation of the episode, and that. But again, I think we've covered all kind of the key things. So let's dive into Exodus, the finale. And what I'll do is, it's broken into 2. I'll just read them both, but we'll just talk about them kind of as one story, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
All right. Exodus Part 1. And by the way, these were written by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. So I always take note of the episodes written by those guys because they're usually pretty good. Danielle Rousseau surprises the castaways by showing up at the camp with an ominous warning. The others are coming. The raft finally sets sail with Michael, Walt, Jin, and Sawyer on board. As they depart, black smoke mysteriously appears from the other side of the island, a harbinger of the imminent arrival of the others. As the castaway, Exodus Part 2, written by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse, as the castaways brace themselves for an attack by the others, Claire's baby is kidnapped, leading Charlie and Saeed on a dangerous chase into the jungle. While the threat of the others bears down on the castaways, the raft crew continues on their flight from the island. But when the hope of rescue appears on the horizon, they will soon learn that appearances can be deceiving. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Exodus, the first finale of Lost, I mean, like, this had buku ratings. This was a big deal. It was like a 2-hour finale. It really feels. I really want to I want to hear a lot about how you reacted to this, Jay. But this episode feels like a movie to me. It's very cinematic.
When this originally aired, I mean, it's basically 3 episodes. Did all 3 air together on the same night?
If I remember correctly, and actually, I think the air dates are in here.
Air dates. No, part 1 and then both parts of part 2 aired at the same time.
Okay. That actually sounds kind of how it would have done. The first part, I think the first part and then the final 2 aired together on one night.
I was going to say when we started, I was kind of trying to figure out what was going on, because on Hulu this is basically 5 episodes. But technically it's only 4 episodes as far as the way it was aired. So I was kind of confused. Right. I was like, where am I getting an extra episode from?
That's right. Yeah. So in fact, you could almost break Exodus into 3 episodes, because there's the first hour and then the final 2 kind of air together. They go together. I mean, again, it all goes together. But
let me just ask you a question. Danielle shows up. Okay, the others are coming. You got to get out of here. You got to hide. They're going to kill you, or whatever, fight or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that was all just a ploy to get them away so she could steal the baby?
So and again, if we can cover this part first. So what Jay would, again, if you're watching this with us, hopefully you have watched this with us. If not, stop, come back and watch this after you've watched these episodes. But what Jay is referring to is Danielle warns them the others are coming. She helps Jack and Locke and Kate and Hurley and Arts kind of run a mission. And then she kind of leaves and comes back and kidnaps baby Aaron. What happens then is Saeed and Charlie chase her, and there was, in fact, like a giant plume of black smoke. Right. My interpretation of events are that she did hear the others. All she heard the others say was they were coming for the boy. She thought they meant the baby, when in fact, the others were coming, but they weren't coming for Aaron. They were coming for Walt. That has been my interpretation of what happened. Because if you remember, that's what she said. As Saeed and Charlie are walking away, and Rousseau's kind of standing there weeping, she says, "They said they were coming for the boy." Like,
I never thought about it like that. Yeah,
it's that thing where, in retrospect, even knowing everything you haven't watched Beyond yet. Everything that happens that you've seen so far, when you put it all back together, the others were coming for Walt. She didn't understand what they meant.
Well, let me ask you this then. I'm jumping all the way to the end.
You're jumping around. That's fine. That's what.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get it all straight in my brain. So is that the others then that take Walt?
They would certainly seem to be other people we haven't seen yet.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Why? Well, what prompts the question?
Well, I didn't think. I mean, so I guess they're headed back to the island then, with Walt. I mean,
I'm not sure where they.
Because that never occurred to me. I thought they were just some random group of pedophile pirates.
I don't want to spoil too much, but I think with everything you have seen, the one point of clarification I will give you that I didn't have at the time is that those are the others.
But, see, that never occurred to me. Okay.
But your question is a good one, because actually I recall there was a lot of debate in the fan community about that. Like, are those the others? Are they a different group of others? Are there like what's like? I feel like with all the information you've received so far, though, I think it's safe to say that because and the reason being, it's all in that sentence by Rousseau. That if you take that sentence and then what actually happens, I think the facts are clear.
Okay.
That the others were coming. It's just that she misunderstood what they meant and had no idea what they were actually after. And in fact, it was Walt.
Can't wait to see Walt shine those guys.
But yeah, so we're jumping to a lot of things here, and that's fine. But yeah, so that's kind of the. Well, first off, let's go a little bit in order. So yeah, so Danielle does that. We there's kind of a rush then to get the raft launch because Jack's whole plan is like, hey man, we're screwed. The others are coming, but you know what? Let's get this raft launched. We need to get rescued. But hey, we just found this hatch in the jungle. Wouldn't it be great if we could hide everybody in it? Like maybe that's what we can do. Except it's, Locke, I'm sure, has pointed out like, hey, but I can't get into it. Like I've been trying for a while to get into this damn thing and I can't. But Rousseau says, hey, I know where there's some dynamite. And so we have yet another solved mystery. The black rock that Danielle Rousseau has been referring to all season is not, in fact, a giant rock. It's a pirate ship or a slave ship, really, that's in the middle of the island. That's got boxes of dynamite in it, as well as a bunch of slave corpses all strewn about. And so that's, again, mystery solved. We got one mystery there. But I don't want to jump too far ahead because so let's talk about great moments, okay? The others are coming. Like that just I get chills when Rousseau shows up and she warns everybody. There's a scene that, and I don't know if you were as touched as I was, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of tears shed in this episode. My poor wife cries no matter how many times we watch this episode at numerous parts. But kind of the first man cry part is, if you remember, Sawyer knows that he has actually met Jack's dad before. Yeah. And before Sawyer leaves to get on the raft, and Jack is kind of going out to march into the jungle to go to the Black Rock, he reveals this to Jack, that he met a man named Christian in a bar, and that Christian talked about his son who's a doctor, and that he loves him, and he's a better man and a better doctor that he'll ever be, and that he should really call him, but he never did.
Yeah.
And, Jack kind of breaks down there a little bit, some good man cry material there.
Yeah.
But, like, that scene is just, you've got Josh Holloway at 110%. You've got Matthew Fox at 110%. Like, that's just a great lost scene. What were your feelings on that one?
Well, I mean, Sawyer's been sitting on this, for a month. So, or at least thinking that was Jack's dad.
Yeah.
And hasn't told him, until now because, he's kind of been a jerk this whole show to everyone. Yeah. But it's just like, Sawyer's starting to show that, he's not, a complete jerk all the time. So, he was kind of, this was their farewell, good luck to you. It's like let's hug it out, bro.
Well, I think it's a testament, I think, to the complexity of the character. Like, yeah, Sawyer is a dick sometimes. He's a funny dick, by the way. I get a kick out of Sawyer, but that, like, at the end of the day, like, Sawyer, to the point we're making the live together, die alone stuff, like, Sawyer is with these people. Jack is a guy he knows now, and he may never see him again. And he knows this thing about Jack's dad that might actually give Jack some peace.
That's what I was going to say.
And he does it.
So
like
much
Sawyer.
Jack's lost his dad, and has been struggling with that because it's a terrible situation. He probably blames himself for his father having that breakdown to begin with. After losing his job, of course he blames himself. And then his dad died, and, all that. So, Sawyer does him that favor. He could very well not say that, but he does it to give Jack something that he needs to move forward. About that in his life, and it really shows that he's not such a bad guy after all.
Right. But notable is that we talked about there's kind of a love triangle: Jack and Kate, Kate and Sawyer, that kind of thing. Kate doesn't want to say goodbye to Sawyer. Right. Kind of, she just that's why she kind of treks off in the jungle. And so when the raft is being launched, you can tell Sawyer was looking for her, and she wasn't there. They had already left. But I want to go in order here. So Jin and Sun have a pretty poignant goodbye scene. And by the way, that's like Michael Giacchino, that motherfucker. This episode's music is out. This is like I just if I may for the fans here. Do 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 do, like that big, like if I and by the way, in the script, I think they even wrote, there's something in the script, I have to find the exact language, maybe I can dig it up while we're talking, but it's basically just like they wrote something in the script that like, and Giacchino carries us out appropriate to the moment. And they always talk about like Carlton Cuse, Damon Lindelof, Jack Bender, the director, always talk about how they filmed this scene, and even as they were filming it and doing it, they knew it was something special because it really felt like they had done this season. This show sort of blew up. They all kind of became famous overnight. This show got super popular, became the zeitgeist, and then at the end of the season, like there's this very physical act of they launched the raft, and they thought it was pretty special what they were doing as they were filming it on the beach, but that when Michael Giacchino paired that scene with that beautiful score, which will actually recur a couple other times in the show, like that guy is just, he works magic. Like I would argue that Lost is what it is for a lot of reasons, but that the music of Lost is really one of the differentiating factors. And so just to come to like when Jin and Sun say goodbye, that's when you first have the first like violin strings of the beginning of this song that eventually builds and swells. But the Jin and Sun goodbye, like, I don't know, sir, but that's a rather touching tug at the old eyes.
They've been kind of arguing, or he's been mad at her.
Yeah.
So they kind of make up, and she gives him some English, helping him to learn English, like I guess phonetically sounding stuff out for him so he can
communicate on the raft. And so they sort of reconcile right before he leaves to try and go and get them rescued, right?
Could you leave your wife in a situation like that?
That's tough. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would, but
I mean, I guess in his mind, like, it's either this or we're going to die on this island. So
yeah, I mean, I think again, that seems to be what he sort of communicates to her. Is it's like I have to get you rescued. Like, we have to get out of here. Like, I'm doing this for you. Really,
I don't know, man. It seems so. I mean, they've built a pretty solid boat or ship, whatever you want to call it. So I mean, but it just seems so unlikely that you would not die out there. But
I mean, they're all taking a risk. I mean, I think they acknowledge that, but I mean, their point is they haven't seen any planes, they haven't seen any boats. They're trapped on this island. There's a weird monster in the jungle. Yeah. Like, we got to do something, And they've got radar, they've got a radio, they got a flare. I mean, I guess they feel like they're doing the best they're doing the best they can, but But so that scene's pretty powerful. The other one that always gets me is Walt giving Vincent to Shannon. It's like, I'm sorry, man. You want to start getting me crying, start getting the animals involved, and Vincent's got a couple mentions here, but Walt has a line. Vincent took care of me after my mom died, and that maybe he could do the same thing for you because of Boone. And and again, Shannon has been kind of an up and down character all season, and now she's, given the responsibility for the dog, and I think that just kind of, again, you want to make an unlikable character likable, pair her with the dog everybody loves. You know what I mean? And then the raft launch itself. I mean, again, we've got the Michael Giacchino music swelling. We're pushing the boat out. Vincent the dog tries chasing the raft. Yeah. Like every single time. She's probably going to yell at me because she watches the show live sometimes. My wife bawls every time that dog chases Walt into the ocean, which, by the way, not scripted. The dog just did that.
Really? Wow.
And that was not scripted. The dog just did that. And credit to Malcolm David Kelly playing the scene. Like, no, Vincent, go back, man. Like, and then Shannon goes and grabs the dog. But like that scene, again, that kills my wife every time. But it's like that whole scene just super powerful and so cinematic. That's what I mean. The music, the cinematography. Jack Bender is and so Cameron's in the chat just noting, he says Jack Bender is the, here, I'll show it. We got a show here. Jack Bender is the unsung hero of Lost. That's really true. I believe that. Jack Bender was, I think we talked about this in an earlier show, Jack Bender really was sort of the creative influence for the show on the island of Hawaii, in Oahu. Obviously, Damon Lindelof, Carlton Cuse, the creative minds behind the show, the fabulous writing staff. And it's not like they weren't in Hawaii too and working with Jack Bender, but Bender was the guy on the ground running the operation. So even if he wasn't directing an episode, as he did here, if I remember correctly, Jack Bender directed every single finale episode of Lost. He definitely turned in some great work here in this finale. But then again, that episode ends very that part of Exodus ends very creepily with the black smoke looming in the distance on the island. The next episode.
Hold on. We do solve one mystery in this.
Okay, which mystery is that?
What is Sawyer's real name?
That is correct. I thought, did we not have that stated by this point?
Was it not? I wasn't aware of it.
Oh, maybe it wasn't. Okay, that's right. That's
James
right.
Ford.
Yeah. He's James Ford. That's correct. I thought his name might have come up in one of his flashback episodes, but you might be right. Yeah.
You may be right, but I feel like we would have talked about it if so.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. Yeah, James Ford. That's right. That's his real name.
All of his, talking down to Kate the whole time, he's actually a criminal as well. So he's wanted for all sorts of stuff in the U.S., so that's why he's on this flight, because he's being extradited.
Well, just so it's clear, well, no, he's not being extradited. He's being deported. Like, I don't think he's going to get arrested in the U.S., but basically he's not allowed to go to Australia anymore. He gets booted out of the country. By the way, I don't think, or at least this is just my interpretation, I don't think Sawyer talks down to Kate. What I think Sawyer does is Kate likes to pretend she's like Miss Morality. And Kate talks down to Sawyer. And I think Sawyer reacts to basically like, you're no better than me.
Yeah.
Like, we are the same. Like, we're actually, and even more so, you and I are the same. Like, we're closer than you and Jack. Like, and that's why you hate me. Or like, that's why you can't like let yourself be with me, because you know how much you and I are alike, whereas Jack is goody two shoes. But that's just my interpretation. I clearly have more in my head that I'm trying to just operate on the same information you have. But even that, I think operating on just the information you have, I still think that flies. I still think that's
yeah. I agree with you.
Cameron made a comment here
in that sense as to tell everyone else, why does she need a spot on the boat, and versus me, because she's the criminal. She was the one in handcuffs.
Well, because think about it, everybody shits on Sawyer. Sawyer's stealing everybody's stuff. Everybody looks down on Sawyer. He's the jerk. And so I think his fault. That is his fault. But I'm just saying his whole point is Kate is no better. She was she's the one who was on this plane in handcuffs. I wasn't.
Gotcha.
Cameron made a comment. Could the finale of season 1 be the least exciting one in retrospect? I got to be honest. That's interesting. I'm not.
That's a pretty bold statement.
I'm not. Well, yeah, and you couldn't judge that one, and I don't want to. I won't get into spoilers. I don't know. The only reason I hesitate to accept that is only because, to me, the first season finale of Lost, I think, is more than the sum of its parts. Yes, it was the finale of the first season, and there's certain story threads that come up, and I do think it's very exciting. But I think there's an added level of excitement because of all of the meta context. The whole first season, like we were talking about, it's really the culmination of something that should not have been, right? The fact that Lost was successful, the fact that it took off, all these. We talked about this at the very beginning, even all the actors that are on the show that are now famous, that became names, Lost was cast after pilot season was over. They got all these people seemingly scrubs, right? So I'm just noting. Again, Cameron has a point. There are certainly some momentous things that happen in finales to come. But I give the Lost first season finale a lot of extra weight because of the added context. So I'll leave it there. We'll talk about this more as we go through the rest of the show, Jay. But that's my reaction to that. So there is a trek across the island. So the raft launches, but meanwhile, Jack, Kate, Hurley, Rousseau and Dr. Arzt go to, and I'll explain Dr. Arzt in a second. They're going to the Black Rock to get dynamite to open the hatch. Dr. Arzt is along because he's apparently, he like Jack is an expert in everything. He apparently understands monsoon season, and he also wants to come along here because the plan to carry dynamite across the island, he's trying to explain to them that this is crazy. Dynamite's been sitting in the jungle for who knows how long. It's dangerous. He needs to come to help them do that. We learned that Dr. Artz's first name is Leslie. Dr. Leslie Arzt, which Hurley refers to as a pretty bitchin' name. And as we were talking about, Arzt sort of reveals his disdain for our main cast, at how they're a clique, at how they don't seem to think anyone else on the island is doing anything of importance. Again, just some funny meta commentary. But we get some additional mythology.
I'm sorry.
Can you repeat? I didn't catch that.
Do you think the gym teachers would let me sit with them? No. Arzt is comedy gold. That's for truth. As they are walking, Rousseau reveals just some other nuggets, kind of show mythology. She does say that they have to go through the dark territory to get to the Black Rock. What is the dark territory? I guess you could call that a mystery. And she refers again to her misbegotten scientific team that were infected, and she refers to Montand, who lost his arm.
again, how were her team infected, and what happened to Montand and his arm? This, by the way, is what sends Dr. Arts running back to the camp because he gets scared and doesn't want to be part of it. But the return of the monster happens in this episode. The monster chases them through the jungle. They hide again. And that's, Arts has to go with them to the Black Rock because he gets chased back to them, and that's part of what happens there. We learn, as we said earlier, we learned that the Black Rock is actually a ship stranded in the middle of the jungle that had slave corpses. They start pulling dynamite out of the ship. Arts goes off on them. Hey guys, this dynamite is very it's unsafe. You can't move too quickly with it. He's showing them how to take it out, and then Arts blows up. Did you see that coming, by the way? I want to know, did that shock you?
I was going to say, did anyone not see that coming?
Yes.
Because, I mean, I knew exactly what was going to happen, but all the while giving everyone a history lesson on the inventor of dynamite.
Yes. Which apparently his history lesson is wrong. Because actually, his history lesson is wrong. The actual inventor of dynamite did not blow up. Like, if you actually look it up, that's not in fact true. I believe there is someone else he's referring to that I think there is truth in that, but the actual inventor of like nitroglycerin, I don't think that's accurate, if I remember correctly. I'm going off of like Wikipedia or Lostpedia or something. Again, Lostpedia is not a place you should go yet, Jay, but there is a font of information about this kind of stuff. But yes. Dr. Arts blows up, and then later Jack has some arts on him, which I thought was a funny line.
Early's kind of taken aback by the whole thing, more so than everyone else.
Yes.
Early's like, I was just making friends with this guy, and now he's dead.
Yeah. I actually rather like the scene with Jack and Locke in the jungle because actually, I'm sorry, I skipped over something. I'm sorry. When Dr. Arts shows up running from the monster, Locke doesn't run, and he tries to keep Hurley from running, and he doesn't. They basically just stay there, and nothing does happen to them, but the others do run. More, and again, there's evolution on the story, but I did want to call that little nugget of information out that Locke is almost like testing fate here. That the monster comes and he thinks he's got some special kinship with it, and he doesn't run initially. But anyway, back to they're taking dynamite out of the crates, and Locke's telling a funny story about Operation as they're pulling the pieces out, and I just like how he like to Jack while they're taking the pieces out.
He smiles at him.
Yeah, and Jack, and if you remember, Jack kind of turns that a little bit on Locke because he still doesn't really trust him, and he's sort of like, "You like to play games, John?" And I believe Locke says that he does.
Yeah. Always gets me on the funny bone.
Always gets him on the funny bone. That's right. So they all draw. Again, control freak Jack does not want Kate to carry any of the dynamite. And Locke points out, I think actually smartly, given what all just happened, that like, hey, listen, if we're going to carry this dynamite, maybe multiple people should carry it, and let's make sure we give ourselves some space here. Kate wants to carry it. Jack thinks he should carry it because, of course, the only doctor on the island should be carrying around dynamite that's going to blow up. Again, more smart stuff from Jack. They draw straws, and as we learn later, Jack actually switched packs, and he is in fact carrying the dynamite because he's a cock. But we get another. Well, I'd say it's a little bit of an evolution of a mystery, but the monster chases them again, and this time we kind of see it. What did you see, Jay?
Is this when it grabbed Locke?
Well, if you remember, they saw like a wisp of it right before that happened. They saw like a wisp of black smoke.
Yeah.
Kind of move through the jungle, And then they were like, did you just see that? And then the monster attacked. And then, yes, it did grab Locke and tried to drag him into a hole.
And then they throw the dynamite in, against Jack's orders. And Kate throws the dynamite in. And the monster lets go. But it was really, it's all CGI. And I was going to ask you, like, exactly what was I looking at? Because it looked like smoke came out and then got sucked back in. To me,
it looked like they hit the monster appeared to be black smoke,
right?
And they threw dynamite at it, and the dynamite, kind of knocked it, took the wind out of it. Pardon the pun. And it kind of went away then, but yeah, they all saw it too, and which actually it's a funny part because as they're trekking through the jungle, and Locke wanted Jack to let him go. Locke tried to sort of not confront, but tried to kind of approach the monster again. This time it didn't go his way. The monster grabbed him and tried dragging him into a hole in the ground. Rousseau also referred to she actually referred to the monster. Do you remember what she called it?
Mm-mm.
She said it's a security system.
Oh, right. For the island, yeah. Which
is interesting. But yes, it tried dragging Locke into the hole. But later, as they're talking, Kate's like, "Yeah, what are you doing, like Locke? Like, did you see that?" And Locke's kind of like, "Yeah, did you see it, Kate? I wonder what Jack thinks he saw." Basically, kind of poking at Jack because Jack keeps pretending like this is just some regular island, when every day they're confronted with some new reason to think we're not in an ordinary place. A column of black smoke grabbed Locke and tried to drag him into a hole. That's not a normal thing that just happens. You don't just explain that necessarily. So again, not an answer, but that is, I guess we could say that's sort of the first sort of official look we've gotten at the monster so far.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, we had talked about this before, but before we started this series on Lost, the only thing I knew about the show was smoke monster. I'd heard that term before, and so if there's one negative thing I can say about this show so far is the CGI.
There are some things that occasionally pop up. I would say it does get better as the show goes on because the budget goes up and the CGI gets better.
Well, I just feel like we're at a period of time where it wasn't quite there yet, and it shows. The same show on mid 2000s CGI wasn't that great, but
even by season 2, it's a lot better. I'll just say that.
And at one point we saw a bird. Was that a giant bird?
Actually the bird is something so I'm glad you did take notice of the bird because there's actually the fan base reacted to that bird. There were a lot of fans who thought they heard that bird say Hurley.
Oh wow.
Do you think you heard that or you just heard a big bird?
I didn't hear that. I'll go back and listen to it again though.
Yeah, it didn't actually say Hurley. But it kind of becomes, when I talk about how the writers sort of have like a meta dialogue with the fans, there are some things that they do kind of reacting to the fans that are more like jokes than they are like real things. So I'm just gonna stick a pin in that for now, and there may be something about that later, but I'd say it's really more of kind of like a joke.
Throwing some red herrings out there to the fans.
Well, it's just kind of like because there are fans who think the bird said Hurley, and the fact of the matter is it didn't. But I think later on they kind of play it up a little bit just to kind of play with the fans a bit. If we can, let's jump a little bit because we did talk about the Rousseau story, kidnapping the baby, which the baby gets a name this episode. I can actually say, I think I accidentally said the baby's name before. I don't know whether you caught it. Aaron. She named the baby Aaron. But I always thought the scene of Saeed and Charlie chasing Rousseau, where like one of her traps like busts Charlie's head open. I've always thought the scene where like Saeed's solution is to like put gunpowder in the wound and light it on fire was, I don't know, I just always thought that was a really badass scene. Like I don't know if that would actually work, but I at least buy the TV logic.
I guess cauterizes it, stop the bleeding at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Charlie's off with Saeed trying to get the baby back for Claire, and when they find out the baby was kidnapped, Charlie actually blames Saeed. And punches Saeed. And then Saeed grabs him by the throat and says, "Do not punch me again."
Yeah, fucking Saeed. I love that guy.
Showing restraint to getting, after just getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
Always putting logic first, Saeed.
Yeah. And so in terms of, so again, that was in my list of like great moments, but just to keep up with the mysteries. So we solved the Black Rock, the mysteries. How is Danielle's team infected? How did Montan lose his arm? And then I kind of, again, just a reiteration of the mystery. What is the monster? Black smoke? Like that's weird. But Rousseau, kind of another, like a great moment. We talked about it before, but just, it's kind of in my list here. Rousseau did hear the others. The others did say they were coming, but they were actually talking about Walt, not Aaron. And again, we'll get to that in just a moment. But the thing that let's take a time out to talk about the big discussion in the episode, which is they have the dynamite, they've escaped the monster, they're on their way to the hatch. Jack and Locke are kind of walking, in a line, and they kind of have it out a little bit. And this conversation is sometimes referred to as the man of science, man of faith, discussion, but it's really, I would say that this scene kind of encapsulates what Lost is about, because Locke reiterates to Jack that, his belief that what's happening on the island is not coincidence. That they didn't, if you're, think about what he says. He says, do you think it's a coincidence that we all crashed and we survived with superficial injuries, specifically on this island, right, with all the things they've seen so far? And Locke believes they're there for a reason. He doesn't know what that reason is exactly. He seems to think that the reason they're here is to get into the hatch. Jack doesn't believe that. He thinks they're trying to get into the hatch purely, again, it's a very sort of fact-based, objective-based thinking. It's like, no, we're going to the hatch because there's people coming to get us, and we want to hide in it, and we're going to open it up and see if that's possible. But that's it. But I think Jack is even more suspicious of Locke, because Locke is talking about how the island brought them there. Locke has seemed to give some kind of personality to the island, or divine purpose to the island.
He's got a point, Jack. If Boone had never dropped that flashlight, they would have never known that was even there.
That's true. All these things, it's a chain of events. That's right. But I think Jack suspects yet again that Locke's belief in this island and what he thinks is happening is what got Boone killed. Because if you remember, that's one of the things Jack says. He's like, did you talk to Boone about Destiny, John? I watch that scene, it gives me chills. Like, it is such a great scene. And it concludes with the line where Locke tells him, he's like, I think that's why you and I don't see eye to eye, Jack, because you're a man of science and I'm a man of faith. They don't again, they have it out, but I wouldn't say they come to any kind of resolution there because they have to kind of keep moving, get to the hatch, do what they were setting out to do. But that is an important conversation and one that I would implore you to remember. But sorry, what were your thoughts about it, Jay?
About the speech in the jungle itself.
Yeah.
It really just kind of just actually says what we're all thinking. You know, we know these two guys are at each other and one believes this, one believes that. So basically we're going to see how many like magical things have to happen before Jack believes this island is something special. And a few other tidbits in this episode. We get stuff that I'm sure is going to come up, in the future. We get to see Locke. He's wheeled around in the wheelchair quite a bit in the airport scenes. A few different people. We get to see Michael in the airport. I think we get to see Jack in the airport. Maybe in the previous episode. But we get to see, in the background, Locke's being wheeled around in his wheelchair, and it's really kind of humiliating for him because they're not able to. The wheelchair is not available that they use, so they have to carry him onto the flight, and it's obviously humiliating for a guy like Locke who wants to be independent.
What we did and what we didn't discuss at the top, and that's my miss, is that this episode is not any one person centric.
Right.
This is kind of a flashback episode for pretty much kind of the whole main cast. So like you say, we get a snippet of Jack at the airport at the bar meeting Michelle Rodriguez.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
That's interesting, right?
I was like, man, this woman looks like Michelle Rodriguez. And it was. Yeah. Sounds like her too. And it was her. But I made a note there. Another reason that I hate Jack. Every woman on earth wants to have sex with him immediately. Like he walks in the room and everyone just drops their panties. It's really makes me not like Jack that much more. But,
yeah.
We also get to see Jen. I think we see Locke and Jen's flashback also.
Again, there's like a lot of shit. Like, Locke is kind of like always like sitting in his wheelchair, like in the back of other people's scenes, right?
And we learn that Jen was intending on running away from the family, her father, son's father, and they know what he's doing because they have a white guy who's fluent in Korean.
Yeah,
who tells him he's obviously one of the heavies for her father. Tells them, we know what you're doing. You better not do it.
Yeah. And then,
hey, brother, can you pass me a paper towel? Well, no,
And then similarly, there's a scene of Sun sitting and like hearing some folks who don't think she understands English.
Yeah.
And kind of, speaking kind of shitty about what she's doing.
They laid that on heavy, didn't they? Good gosh. Like, the people like that really exist. God.
I mean, that's the thing, is I think people like that do, that happens, I think.
That's
But also another fun snippet was that Saeed's great love Shannon reported him to like the whatever's the Australian equivalent of the TSA. She basically, it's like, I don't know, some like Arab guy left his bag near my seat.
Just like as a joke to show Boone that she can get what she wants,
Yeah, because she's hardcore like that.
She's a psychopath.
A little bit, yeah. We saw, and Hurley's sequence in this episode is hilarious because it's like Hurley does everything in his power to get on that plane. His car breaks down, his alarm doesn't go off, like he can't get through airport security, but he still manages to make it to the plane, and then it crashes.
It's funny to see Hurley because when he gets out of his car, he's got like three large briefcases. Large suitcases. And when he actually gets on the plane, he's got like one small duffel bag is all he has left because he's like lost it in the rush to get there.
Yeah.
They make him buy 2 seats because he's so fat.
Yeah.
That's pretty, I don't know. Pretty
one
shitty
thing one thing we haven't really talked about a ton yet, though, is the time on the raft.
Right.
There's kind of some good character stuff with Jin and Michael and Sawyer and Walt kind of out on the raft. First of all, Jack gave Sawyer. I think there's like a scene where their rudder breaks off and badass Sawyer jumps in and drags it back to the ship, but Michael sees that Sawyer brought a gun, which Jack gave him.
Right.
And I guess I just always thought like it was like Michael he was being kind of shitty. Like I guess I didn't understand like why he was all offended that Sawyer had a gun.
I feel like he felt like Sawyer was hiding the fact that he had a gun. I feel like maybe what he was upset about.
Okay. I don't know. Michael is just a character that kind of pisses me off sometimes, and so maybe I was just taking him the wrong way. That's
they all
fair.
do. I mean, I feel like all the characters, they're showing their faults as well as their strengths all the time.
Yeah.
So you hate someone this episode, and you may like them next episode.
Right. Jin it seems like Jin feels free, and in fact, the sequence you were mentioning, like with flashback, where the guy kind of confronts Jin in the bathroom, was sort of like back to back with the scene. Like Jin gives Michael the watch. The watch, incidentally, that Jin was like going to beat Michael to death for finding in the jungle, episodes ago. Jin gives Michael that watch kind of as a gift, like as a friend. Like these guys are buddies now. There was a nickname Sawyer called Michael and Jin Han and Chewie, which it might be my favorite nickname
that's definitely my favorite as well.
Yeah.
And it was one we missed in first part of Exodus Part 2. Sawyer called Walt a kazoo.
Okay, I forgot about that one. Yeah, there's some good stuff there. And then doesn't Walt call Sawyer's note like stupid or something? Because remember, like Sawyer's reading his letter again, and he's like, "It's a letter I wrote to the man I'm gonna kill," and he's like, "That's weird." Or he says something.
Well, yeah. At one point, Sawyer's just reading everyone else's letters too, and the Scott.
Who is Hugo Reyes, and why does he? What is it like? Who's Hugo Reyes, and why does he have $150 million?
And the Scott joke comes up again. He's like, "Steve, that's Scott. Scott's dead."
Yes, I don't know why I like that joke so much, but the fact that Sawyer continually makes the mistake, like it's always him being corrected, that like no, it's like that's Steve, Scott's dead. Or
we definitely need to make note of that going forward whenever that's brought up.
I believe it will come up again. Like it definitely does come up again. And in fact, I actually think, by the way, that was actually Sawyer making a reference to Scott. Or maybe I'm mixing them up again. Who's the one that's dead?
I think Scott's dead.
Scott's dead. Yeah, Steve. Like I guess Steve is like sleeping with I forget the woman's name, but like he's like, oh, she misses her husband, but she's like cuddling up with Steve on the island. But again, there's some good like. So let's come to the big moment. We've sort of mentioned that it happens, but on the raft, it's dark, and Saeed gave them basically a radar dish, and that was actually why they got the battery from Rousseau several episodes back in the Hurley flashback episode, and they turn it on every now and again, and they actually pick up a signal. And so Sawyer pressures Michael into firing the flare. And I mean, this is like a super tense, again, it's like credit to Jack Bender and even like, the scriptwriters, like for mining the tension in the scene. But, there's, the beeping of the radar, the shots into the darkness of the ocean. And then a boat appears and, there's a light, they put a light on them. And, they're like, hey, we're on an island. And and the boat.
You think at this point, hey, they're saved.
Yeah, you think they're rescued
saved now.
And the boat captain or the guy speaking for them says, "The thing is, we're gonna have to take the boy." And I always, even after having seen it now a few times, I can tell you the first time I saw it, I got I got a chill, like I got goosebumps. Yeah. I remember being like, and the music right then. Remember, I've made a comment about the music on the show, how some of the music is done using the plane wreckage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific string pull. Like when he says that, we're gonna have to take the boy. It's like, bow, but it's this very queer string. I just like that. That gives me goosebumps every time. And it's like Michael's like, what? And he repeats what he says. Yeah, we're going to have to take the boy. And they kind of come on the boat and take Walt. Sawyer tries to shoot him. He gets shot. Jin chases him. These guys, they lob like a friggin' bomb on the boat and blow it up. And that's the last we see of our intrepid raft crew for the season, in the middle of the ocean, with a blown up raft and the people on the boat driving Walt away.
I hope Walt kills them all.
And so then the final, I always, again, I've said this for so many things, it's perhaps meaningless at this point, but the final montage of the season, the sort of juxtaposition of everybody getting on the plane juxtaposed with the setting up of the dynamite on the hatch and blowing the hatch, which at the last minute, by the way, Hurley sees the numbers on the hatch and freaks out and tries to stop Locke from setting off the dynamite, which Locke doesn't listen to him and lights the dynamite. But that final sequence, the music, that kind of instrumental, which by the way is kind of a reprise of the life and death theme, which is I think what that piece of music is called from when Boone died. Again, everybody getting on the plane, getting in their seats with kind of everybody kind of clearing the wreckage from the hatch being blown open. And then that friggin' shot, Jay, I get chills every time I see it. Because the music, the shot, everything about it, Jack and Locke kneeling over the hole in the hatch. We're kind of staring up at them from inside, and then that and we go into the hatch, but we don't see it. Lost. That kills me every time. Even though I, with the gift of knowledge, know what happens next, that kills me every time. Yeah. I love it. What were you think? What do you think's in the hatch? What were your feelings about this whole thing?
I got no idea, man. What was in it? What would be in there? Whatever I think, it's not going to be right. I mean, we saw the light come on. An idea? I mean, potentially you think there could be people in there because we saw a light at one point. Mm-hmm. No idea, man. It's going to be interesting.
The one thing that I do want to make sure you know, and I'll say for the people watching now and for the people that may watch in the future, because this is always, again, people are always, the criticisms thrown at Lost is oh, they're making it up as they went along, there's no answers, all that bullshit. The hatch was something that was part of the development of the show. I'm not going to tell you what's in it yet. You're going to see it when you watch the next batch of episodes, but the hatch, when I was telling you how Damon Lindelof kind of was running a writer's crew to come up with the show after the pilot was written, they came up with a number of things. One of them, J.J. Abrams, if I'm not mistaken, was the one who came up with the hatch. Hey, there's a hatch, and this island has a hatch, and there's something inside it. And then Damon Lindelof and the other writers came up with what's inside it. Now, some of the like some certain details about what's inside it, and sort of the surrounding story there, some of that did change over time. Like it matured, but they knew. So I want to make sure that even though the season ends where we still don't see what's in the hatch, they knew. They already knew, even then, what was in it. So I don't want you to think that that just happened because it's they were making it up and they had to come up with something. No, they just ended it at a real fuck you. You better tune in the fall. That was why they did it.
I knew they weren't going to show what was in it. That'd be too easy.
Yeah,
make you work for it.
But it's there's just so much about that episode that episode is actually why I wanted to come up with the great moments category, because I just felt like every scene in the episode had something great going on, so much stuff to talk about in that regard. But so Jay, you've got a season of Lost under your belt. I mean, do you feel like time again? Let's go back to the sort of the central theory of our show. You feel like this was a good use of your time so far? Are you enjoying yourself?
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to getting maybe a little bit of closure on some stuff. Hurley saw the numbers were written on the hatch, of course. The famous numbers he's known for. That's why he's tried to stop Locke from doing it. I just don't know, man. It's so much up in the air right now. If I didn't know, if I was watching this, for the first time, I would think that, those guys could have been potentially rescued, but they turned out to be the whatever weirdo guys that wanted the boy for some reason.
Yeah, I when I first the first time I watched it, even knowing it's a show and if they get rescued, isn't the show over? It's all in how it's presented. It's I watched that scene. The first time I saw that scene, I was just holy shit, man. This is wow. Someone found him. I had no, I didn't imagine that, they're, the others. Well, again, as I say, there was a bit of a debate that were those actually the others that Rousseau is referring to. Are those others, or are these different people? What's going on? That will actually be clarified, but it's kind of. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. I feel like it's fair to tell you that.
Well, that makes sense. How we're going to get Walt back? I can only imagine. But what's going to happen to Sawyer, Jen, and Michael? They're in the middle of the ocean, or wherever they are in the ocean.
Yeah.
With a sinking boat potentially.
Yeah. Well, not potentially. I mean, he got blown up. So
he got blown up. Yeah. I mean, maybe you can.
There's wreckage or whatever, but yeah, they're up the creek.
You can pull a Joe versus the volcano and float around on a trunk for a little while.
Yes.
Have you seen that? You seen that movie?
A long time ago, but
he gets these big fancy trunks, and then the plane crashes, and that's what they have to. He's on one, Meg Ryan's on the other. I believe is how it works.
But and the thing is there's a whole because one thing that we haven't even brought up, and I'm not going to bring it up until it kind of reveals itself. But there's a theory. There were some things happening. I'm in a tough spot because I've seen it and you haven't. And so if there was something I brought up as hey, what about this? You're going to read into it. You're going to think well, he's only mentioning that because he knows. So there's something I actually haven't been explicit about, but there was a lot of theorizing about something during season 1. And I'll just note that in the finale, and I don't know whether you caught it, but in the finale, there was something they did to sort of call to that theory. plant a detail to sort of point the way that maybe that's where they're going. But like, because there was all kinds of theories and all kinds of thoughts about like what's happening and what's going to happen next and what have they encountered. So we'll get there, but there's kind of there's a component of this that you haven't really brought up that it'll be interesting when that comes out to see if you had any suspicions about it.
Let me tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about obviously the hatch, what's in the hatch, and also the power cord coming out of the ocean, or the big electrical whatever. That's it may have something to do with the hatch. Someone has electricity coming from somewhere from that power. What is all that from?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so many questions right now. It's not enough answers.
Yeah, a lot of questions. There are answers coming. We will see. But
another big mystery: will Charlie start using heroin again? Because at the end of Exodus,
that's right,
Part 2, Part 1. Charlie comes across the plane with Saeed when they're trying to find Danielle. And at the end of Exodus Part 2, Part 2, we find out that he has one of the Mary statues in his bag after he gives Aaron back to Claire.
That actually is a good mystery. I mean, it's maybe less of a mystery and more of just a fairly good plot question. Like, oh man, like, is Charlie going to start using again? But I did have flagged I didn't close out my mysteries list. Where did the others take Walt and why? Yeah. And then I wrote, what's in the hatch? Ah! But one thing I will note, and because Cameron said it too, and it's a good point to make, like, I do want you to understand this, Jay. And if you have any confusion about any of it, you can ask me and I'll explain it. But forget the haters out there that talk about how the show doesn't answer anything. The show answers, it pretty much answers everything. There are maybe some things that are more ambiguous. Like, so I'll say this, like the question of what is the island? There is an answer to that question. Now, there's kind of a lot that goes with that answer. And, there's also a question of, are you going to like the answer? Maybe you won't. But there is an answer, and there's stuff that goes with that. What is the monster? There's an answer to that question.
The conspiracy theorist in me immediately thinks some sort of military involvement. Obviously, because, pretty detailed stuff going on out there. But I'm sure that's not right. I don't know, man. I don't know. Well,
hey, man, we could close this up, and you could go find out. You could spend your evening. So, actually, what I will say then is what I've done in the past. So it sounds like we're closing up. Jay enjoyed Lost Season 1. Good use of time. Highly recommended. So if you are watching along with us, awesome. I hope you are enjoying it. If you've already watched it and love it and enjoying our conversations, awesome. Write us some comments, like our videos. But the thing I have done in past episodes as we've been working our way through Season 1 is I give you a preview of the next episodes we're watching. Because we're at a season break, well, first off, let me ask you, Jay, do you want to do 6 again, or would you rather do 4?
We can do 6. Will that work for you?
It does, and actually, if we do 6, it actually puts it. I think it kind of ends in a good spot to sort of. I think that works. That works for me.
Cool.
But what I will say is that because we're at a season break, I am not going to give the names of those episodes.
Oh, okay.
I will, however, give the name of the premiere of Season 2. The premiere of Season 2, the next episode that you will watch, and again, you will then watch 5 after that, but the next episode is called Man of Science, Man of Faith.
AKA Hatch.
Hopefully that gets your juices going. But
sure.
I will just tell you, and it's anecdotal, but my wife greatly enjoys the opening to Lost season 2. And when we reconvene next week, we can talk about that and why. But
cool.
You are in for a treat, my friend.
Cool. Sounds good, man.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thanks for hanging out with me here on a Saturday night. This is what dads with no lives do when you've got kids. But
absolutely,
I had a good time hanging out with you. I always have a good time watching Lost, and I will see you. Actually, hold on. Before we go, I want to highlight one comment that Cameron just made, which is, I think, a good one. Best characters are yet to come. There is truth in that, because there's actually, there's more than one character, but there's one in mind that I've really, I keep kind of almost saying, even the actor's name, and I always catch myself because I don't want to spoil anything. But Cameron is correct. Again, our main cast is awesome so far. They're awesome, but there's potentially some new frontiers to be explored, and I
cannot Harlem Globetrotters show up at any point.
That's right. That is what's inside. It's a basketball court, and Harlem Globetrotters are inside.
That's a Gilligan's Island reference.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like we might need to make that connection for some people. Yeah. Hey, please, and hit me up with your live reactions as you're watching it. I love to get those. All right, Jay, thanks for joining me. Folks who were chatting with us, that was awesome engagement. I love it. Cameron, thanks for hanging out. Thank you to, let's see who else we got here. We have Roland666. There was someone else. I think Monty was in here at one point. Yeah, it looks like Monty's been inspired. He might give Lost a try. That's awesome. Monty, please do. All right, Jay, have a good evening and enjoy Lost Season 2's premiere.
Absolutely.
All right, good night, folks.
Thanks.